Bible testaments.
How you doing? You've got half of Tim Avery today. I am driving. We are on the road, and
he has full focus on.
So
the road.
You've got my divided attention.
So we wanted to hop on here because you guys know that when Tim has some dreams, they're pretty amazing. They're pretty telling. And
well, this one was a little crazy, and so
quite crazy.
Yeah,
that's typical.
Yeah, but I always throw this at Donna when it comes to like interpreting a dream, because I feel like this dream is so crazy, so outlandish. There ain't no way anybody can interpret it to where it makes sense, because to me, in my mind, it's just crazy. So I always say it's a crazy dream. And so even when I told her that, after I told her, I was like, okay, now interpret that, or interpreter of interpreters, because there ain't no way this dream has any type of meaning. However, after I tell this dream, please feel free to share your interpretation, what you're getting from this dream. But I promise you right now, in the very beginning, this dream, you're going to have a hard time, I believe, trying to interpret this. So anyway, do you want to say anything else before I get to it?
It's definitely a great interpretation lesson. It's challenging, especially to lean into the Holy Spirit and find the depth and the chunks and the good meat of this dream. But it was pretty, I mean, he definitely said, interpret this, so interpreter, and
okay, so this is the dream. I was on a plane, and this is kind of like where I started the dream, as far as I can remember of the dream. And so I know there's other bits and pieces I can't remember, but this dream right here is kind of where it started, what I can remember. So I was in a plane, and I was on a plane, and sorry, I gotta take an exit here a second. And so I was sitting in right next to the door of the plane, and it was like a larger plane. From what I can gather, it would be like a plane that you would jump out and do like skydiving out of, something similar to that size of a plane, to kind of give you guys a point of reference of the size of a plane. And so, but I was sitting right at the door. But the thing is that I was in the mindset of like, okay, I'm gonna jump out this plane because you guys can't hold me back. And I don't know why I was saying that, but it was more like, I'm gonna jump off this plane, you can't hold me back, type of mindset. So I don't know if I was escaping from something or if I was just leaving something to go somewhere.
I definitely want to interject here because I think it's important to ask a question.
Go ahead. So,
actually, two questions. You mentioned that it was a bigger plane, but yet you said it was the type that you hop out of. Well, skydiving can be small planes. One, and number two, so for clarity there. Number two, do you recall anyone that was in that plane that you said, you're not holding me back anymore?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know who else. I know there was other people on the plane, obviously, but because there were somebody flying the plane, so I know that. But I knew that I can just leave because they didn't, either A, they didn't know I was on the plane, or B, they just forgot I was on the plane. Something to that line. Like, again, that goes back to, there's part of that dream I don't remember, but this is the part I do remember, and I think maybe it wasn't as important to know that in the dream because of where the dream was going. So all I know, I was sitting in this compartment next to the door in the plane, and I had a sea bag, or like a garment, like a garment bag, like a sea bag, like it's like a duffel bag, I'll say it that way. But a sea bag, if you're a military personnel, and specifically Navy, you know what a duffel bag or a sea bag is. And so I had my gear in there, and I was like, you ain't gonna stop. I didn't have a parachute, I just had a duffel bag. But this plane, at the time of me about to jump out of the plane, was flying really low over some of the lakes of South Carolina. So I didn't know that. So as I opened up the door of the plane, I looked out to see that I was over a lake and there's land coming up. And so I was like, okay, this is probably a good place to jump. And if I don't jump now, I may not have the opportunity to. It was in my mind. And so I was like, okay. So I put my bag on, and as soon as I jumped in the water, I had my boots on, bag on, the sea bag, and I had another like little big buoy ball thing. I don't know, maybe to help me float is what I was thinking. So I jumped out over the water, but as soon as I jumped, immediately thought, man, I could have waited a little bit longer to hit land, but that's okay. I wanted to jump into the water. So I did that because it was flying pretty low. So it was like maybe 20 feet above the water, something like that. So it was flying low enough to where I knew I was going to hurt myself in that sense, and slow enough. So I jumped into the water, and then I started swimming. And so immediately when I started swimming, I noticed that there was like this big snake swimming, like a python head popped up out of the water, and it was looking for something to eat or something to attack, but it didn't notice me. But I did see it, so I just immediately kind of went underneath the water and just was swimming as best I can. But then I noticed the weight of that bag was like more challenging to swim with than I thought. And so that's when I really started things like, man, I wish I would have got a little bit closer to land, but that's okay. I'll just swim through it. I'm not going to get fatigued enough to where I'm going to drown. So I started swimming with that buoy, and then that snake just kind of passed by. Then the next thing I saw was an alligator, big old alligator head, just kind of like was on me, but more so because I had that buoy that I was dragging to kind of help me stay afloat. It was looking at it, so it was really attracted to this big buoy I had in my hand. And so as I noticed its attention was on it, I started really just wanting to confirm the attention was on it and not on me. And so I kind of extended my arm out, if you will, with the buoy in my hand, and it was tracking or looking and following that buoy. So I was like, okay, this thing's just really attracted to this buoy, not me, doesn't really notice me. And so I just kind of held it out like away from me, and just like swimming. And as I was getting closer and closer to the land, I let it go, right? And so by this time, there's other alligators that are attracted to this buoy, and they're like following it. And so I just let the buoy go, and as soon as the alligators realized that buoy was dead in the water, stopped moving, they immediately turned their attention to me and saw me, and like it was like on me. And I was like, oh man. And so like, this is where the dream gets weird. I say that, but this is where it gets interesting, weird, and maybe a little hilarious. Okay, so track with me. I was swimming, and the alligator was on me, and so it was like kind of following along, like paralleling me. The alligator just kind of tracking me. He was just kind of like this, just kind of looking at me like this. And I was swimming, and I put my hand at it, kind of like to kind of poke it. Like, if you were stiff arm, like you're a football player, you stiff arm players to kind of get away from you, to keep them at a distance. I was doing that, and I was pushing at its shoulder, which is weird. Mm-hmm. And I was just like kind of like pushing it back, and then all of a sudden, like I had this song come out of me. It was weird. It was like I poked at it. I was like, "Are you hungry?"
You were singing that.
I was singing that. I was like, "Are you hungry? Are you hungry? Are you hungry?" And the alligator was like, "Yeah, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I'm hungry." And I was like, and then I said, "Did you eat? Have you eaten? Have you eaten?" It's like, "No, I hadn't eaten. I hadn't eaten." And then there's all the alligators are like smaller size alligators were coming around, and it was like I noticed that they were around, just kind of all looking at me to maybe partake of a delicious meal, I guess. And then as I'm still swimming towards land. I'm still moving in the direction of land. And then I said, I looked at them. I said, "Have you eaten? Have you eaten? Have you eaten?" And then they looked at me and said, "No, we haven't eaten." And I said, and I looked at the bigger alligator, and I said, "But he's eaten. He's eaten. He's eaten." And they're like, "Yes, he's eaten. He's eaten." And I said, "Is he the only?" And so this song was kept going, and kind of getting louder. And these smaller alligators were looking at the bigger alligator, realizing that he's probably the only one that's going to eat, if he's going to eat. If this goes down. And so the song progresses. It was weird. I was getting closer and closer to land. We finally hit land, and I said, "What about the little?" Because there's a little small alligator. And I said, "What about the little gator? What about the little gator?" And he was just, that little gator kind of looked up and was like, "Yeah, what about me?" Kind of like that look on his face. And has he eaten? Has he eaten? And then they're like, "No, he hasn't eaten." So this song kept progressing, and it was like getting fun, and these alligators are like singing this song. And then finally I'm on land, and all these alligators are kind of just lined up singing this song that I've created for them to sing. And then they're singing and singing and singing. And then finally I'm on land, and another military personnel that was with me I guess was part of my command or whatever, said, "Hey, that's great, you made it. That's awesome. Hey, the admiral's in here, and he's got something for you." And I said, "Okay, great." So so I went. So I was singing and singing and singing with the alligators, and then I just walked away, you know. And the alligator kept singing, and so I walked in, and the admiral was in this room, and he says, "Hey, so glad you made it, Tim. That's awesome. Hey, you know, they've got a couple jobs in here. I think they have one for you. It's an MWR gig that maybe pays $500 a month, and maybe that's it." So and I said, "Okay, I'll take it, you know, whatever." And so,
which you pointed out, MWR stands for
morale, welfare, and recreation. It's just like a recreation place for sailors, and just gives them activities and things like that to do. So,
that's awesome.
But anyways, but that was a dream. So I told you, interesting dream, crazy, and that's the one I pitched to Donna about interpreting. So if you have some ideas of what you get from that, I'd love to hear that in the comments below. If you want to hear more dreams, I mean, we've had like one dream that has had like 30,000 views, and so I figured that that's what you guys want to hear, and so we try to share them as when I have dreams. I don't always have them, but when I do, I feel like, man, this is probably a good dream that maybe we can share with the rest of y'all. So anyway, so tell us what you think. Love to hear what you thought, and then we will share later about what we got. Thanks.